Hello, we're looking at Unit 9, Unreal Tenses and Subjunctives. You know that we have started talking about the subjunctive, which is a mood that actually doesn't have a true form in English, right, as compared to Spanish. Mainly in English, we think about the verb form where, when we use it, if I were taller, if he were taller, if they were taller, right? But other than that, English seems to be a bit limited in the use of the subjunctive, as in having a form, right? And that's why you get forms that are different, like when you get there, and if you translate that, that becomes cuando llegues. For me to do something, que yo haga algo. If I had, si tuviera. Another example that I didn't mention in the other video, the country receiving the money will do this. El país que reciba el dinero. So you can see that there are all kinds of forms that eventually lead to the use of the subjunctive in Spanish. And that's something you need to be aware of, because naturally that's what your students will be trying to understand and what you will need to translate eventually. Now, we start here with the first expression with, that is, it's time, or it's high time, which merely emphasizes the idea, right? We're on page 48 now. So if you check this expression, it's time to do something. You say it's time to go to bed, but you can also say it's time for lunch, but it's time the kids were in bed. It's time that farmers listened to consumers. So once you refer to somebody else and include another subject, it has a knock-on effect in the sentence, and we use the typical unreal past, where es hora de que los chicos estén, de que vayan a la cama. It's time farmers listened. Es hora de que los campesinos, los granjeros, los que quieran, escuchen a los consumidores, right? So, sometimes I touch these buttons, I shouldn't. In your notes, the example is, it's time we left. It's high time I was or I were going. And you can see once again the example, sorry, not the example, but the difference between I was going in formal English and I were going in formal English. Remember that the canonical form for the subjunctive is were, not was, right? Now we're going to move on. This expression is very, as you know, very frequent in English, but we're going to have a look at this verb, the verb wish, right? Wish has, Wish is a rather complex verb, right? It can take different patterns. Now we're going to go to, rather than look at the entry from the dictionary, we're going to have a quick look at the explanations here in your book, right on page 48. You have different patterns that colligate with wish. I wish I had a motorbike. I wish you weren't leaving. I wish I was going on holiday with you. You have other examples here. I wish I were taller. I wish I was taller, more informally. In this case, we're using the past. So one of the combinations for wish is the past. I wish I had something. But the past is the tense, but the reference is to present time. So once again, this is the unreal past. And notice again that it's because I say I wish I wish you, I wish they. When I include another subject, this creates a knock-on effect, and I need the past, right? I wish you happiness. We'll see other examples later, other patterns wish can take, right? When I do not include somebody else, right? So that's the first pattern. If we go to, I was just checking, yes, sorry. If we go to the second type of examples in your notes, point number 2, we have the combination of wish plus a modal. I wish you would. I wish you wouldn't leave. Wishing it would ring. And the other one in your example is I wish I could come. Let's stick a little bit with I wish you would, because this is a rather innocent structure, but it is actually not. we tend to think that when we use this expression, I wish you would do something, we use it because first, this person did something repeatedly that annoys us, right? So there's repetition and there's annoyance on our part. Usually repetition for certain people means annoyance, irritation. Now, that's not just it. When I use I wish you wouldn't, I am expressing something more. I am expressing resignation. Why? I know you do something. I know you do this repeatedly. I know it annoys me. I'm asking you to change it, but I know you won't. So that's the whole thing about would, right? There's resignation. You will see that maybe this doesn't, this idea of resignation is not activated in all uses of I wish you would, but do pay attention, right? Because there has to be a difference between I wish you wouldn't do something or I wish you would do something and I wish you did something, right? So merely, well, it's a shame with the simple past. I wish you wouldn't. I'm asking you to change something I know you're not going to change, so resignation. So that's a tiny difference between the two, but maybe not so tiny, right? Okay, you can also use I wish you could. So we can search for could, right? I don't wish to be rude, but could you? Oh, no, that's not the example I want. Sorry, this one is just below. She could not believe. No. Well, no, there are no examples with wish, could following wish, which is the one you have here. I wish I could come on holiday with you. I wish I could do something. Now that's the use of possibility with could, but we can also use ability. I wish I could sing. I wish I could dance. I wish I could fly. And that's ability, right? Remember that in Spanish mostly becomes ojalá supiera, right? Más que pudiera. All right. So those are the patterns for I wish, and there's only one more, which is wish plus the past perfect. Your example here in point number 3 is I wish I hadn't eaten so much, right? Now, sorry, let's go to the hand. Right? I wish, well, the same example, right? I wish I hadn't eaten so much. You know, we have an expression, my eyes are too big for my stomach, right? That's why you say, I wish I hadn't eaten so much. Now, this use of the past perfect, once again, we're referring to somebody else, even if it is our, not somebody else, but another person. No, we're including another subject. I wish I wish you, I wish they. And that creates a knock-on effect for me to use a past form. Now, because I am referring to the past, I need the past perfect. If I use the past simple to refer to the present, then to refer to the past, inevitably, I'm going to have to use the past perfect. That makes sense, right? So, and that refers, this is mostly used for regrets. I wish I hadn't done it, right? So we have seen now the 3 patterns for I wish plus the simple past, plus the past perfect, plus would, plus could, right? There are, of course, other combinations for I wish, right? I wish somebody harm, right? I wish her to stay, right? And other combinations like, well, wish for the impossible, wish for a nicer hotel, wish for him to get better. And you wish someone a happy birthday, wish me luck, wish them both well, you wish them well, wish somebody well, right? You can check out other idioms. Well, actually one, I wish you'll have finished by tomorrow, I wish. That means not really. A job at the BBC, you wish, right? So something you desire, but you won't have it. Now, what is peculiar about the use of the verb wish? It is something that you want to happen or to be true, but it is unlikely or impossible, right? Remember this, because when you say I wish for something, it's because you think it is not going to happen, as opposed to what happens with the verb hope, right? And the main patterns for hope are I hope something happens and I hope something will happen. right? These are not that rare. I hope do you think it will rain? But this is I hope not. So let me check the examples in your notes. In your notes, I hope it doesn't rain, and I hope he will stop. Those are the most frequent patterns for hope that follow hope, right? The present simple or will. Now, what kind of wish do I express with hope? Something you think is possible, right? It is possible. So that's a huge difference, right? Now, we tend to think of wish as the verb that collocates with the past. I wish, or collocates, I wish I had money. But you can use hope with the past too, right? I hope you had the time of your life, goes the song by Green Day, doesn't it? So be careful. That's not the only thing for hope, right? And of course, there are other patterns for hope, right? You hope for the best. You hope for something. You hope that something happens. You hope to do something. He's hoping to win, hope to arrive, hope to achieve, right? Okay, and that's about it with hope. So remember the difference between wish and hope, as in something you don't think will happen with wish, hope something you think is more possible, and also this question of patterns. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to look at some structures on page 49 that are variations on this idea of hope, right? Like rather, I'd rather. Now your example here is, I'd rather you didn't smoke here. Once again, what happened when you say rather? You can also say I'd rather stay, right? I'd rather go. No, wait, like this. Now that's better. She would rather die, right? I'd rather not do something. But if I say I'd rather you, I'd rather they, I'd rather we, you don't say I'd rather I, right? Then once again, the knock-on effect, and I need the past simple. The past simple, which is the unreal past because it refers to present time, right? Once again, here, I'd rather see the money, no problem, I'm not included in another subject. I'd rather have a simple product, once again, the same thing. Now, with sooner, the same thing happens, right? I'd sooner. Now, you should know when you use I'd rather, I'd sooner, I'd prefer, I will insist that you do not use, notice that, I will insist that you do not use the contraction, right? So I will always expect you to say I would rather, in writing in particular. But if you say it orally, I will ask, is it I would rather or I had rather? It's I would rather. I would rather, I would sooner, and I would prefer. Now, let's go to the examples. Not the sooner the better. Now, yes. She would sooner share a house with other students than live at home with her parents, which means she prefers sharing a house, right? Well, there are other very interesting expressions with sooner, but we're not going to go over them. Maybe you want to stop the video now and read them out. Now, so I'd rather do something, I'd rather not do something, right? But I'd rather you did something, right? So remember that once again. Or I'd rather, or I would sooner, the same thing, right? I'd rather and I'd sooner are very, very similar. I'd sooner, I would say, is a bit less frequent, but just a bit, right? It's just a question of preference from speakers. And speaking of preference, we're going to look at the verb prefer, another nightmare. I prefer tea to coffee. I prefer drinking coffee to singing songs. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a good grammatical example, right? So you prefer something, and you can also say I'd prefer tea. I would, please. I would prefer tea, right? And there are other patterns, but this is the one that interests me the most, right? Oh dear. Sorry. I would prefer it if you didn't tell anyone. I would prefer it if you didn't tell anyone. That's a fixed pattern. You cannot change that. The same happens with the verb appreciate, right? I would appreciate it if find the example. I would appreciate it if you paid, please note the irregular past for paid, in cash, right? Very careful. So if you use this pattern, you could say, I would prefer that you didn't do something, but I would appreciate it if you didn't. Once again, you has the knock-on effect for the past, right? If you didn't. Of course, you can say, I would prefer tea to coffee, or I prefer tea to coffee, right? Possibly when somebody is offering you, would say, I would prefer tea to coffee, but in general, you say, I prefer tea to coffee as a fact, right? You can also use the infinitive, I prefer to stay, or I prefer you not to stay. And notice that when you say, I would prefer you not to go, I may use the infinitive too. But if I want to use the past, I would prefer it if you didn't do it. Awful, isn't it? So be careful. You can also use I prefer my coffee black, right? That's another pattern with the verb prefer, right? Okay, nasty verb. Very careful. Okay, now we're going to move on to as if and as though. I really don't know if I forgot to check as if to see if there's a specific entrance here. Entry here, as if and as though. Here it is, in a way that suggests something. He behaved as if nothing had happened. It sounds as though, so they're the same, as though you had a good time. It's my birthday, as if you didn't know. Don't say anything, as if I would, as if I were to say something. Now, as if means clearly it is suggesting something, as if, right? Spanish is very useful here, como si, right? But let's have a look at the sentences you have here, the examples here in your notes. He acts as if he were in charge, and it says here he isn't in charge. The other example is he acts as if he is in charge. And the explanation says he is in charge. Now, I disagree with that. When you say, you see that the most important thing here is that you can use both the past and the present. And this is not always true, or this is not always so, I would say, with all verbs. I mean, in some cases, the subjunctive where is necessary, is mandatory, but sometimes you can use also the present. And what you're showing is a different degree of certainty or likelihood, right? He acts as if he were in charge. So clearly there's a lot of pretense there, right? And possibly you think he is not in charge. But when you say he acts as if he is in charge, possibly you don't feel there's a lot of pretense, but rather that, well, maybe he is in charge. So I wouldn't say he is in charge. I would say maybe he is in charge, right? Everything shows he is in charge, but I'm not certain. Certainly, I am not certain because I said he acts as if, right? Okay, there are many other expressions with as if. Maybe you want to check them out in the dictionary, right? Now, I want to move on to the next expression, which is to feel as if I were flying. And you can also say, you must have heard, I feel as if I am flying, right? So once again, you can, in some cases, you can use the present and you can use the past. And remember that if you use the past, you use the past of the verb to be, it should be where, because it is the most formal. And if you use the past perfect, as in, I feel as if an express train had hit me, then you're talking about the past. You're not talking about the present, right? So, well, I think you got the hang of it, right? Then there are other expressions like imagine or suppose. Suppose we won the polls. Suppose someone told you something, right? The truth is, you can also use the present. Imagine we win the polls. Suppose someone tells you something. And sometimes you can show the difference in Spanish. Imagínate si alguien te dice algo o si alguien te dijera, right? Now, sometimes the structure in English will only allow you to use the past. And sometimes Spanish will allow you to use the present or the past. That is to say, the subjunctive in the present or the subjunctive in the past. And clearly that changes the degree of certainty. So that's something you need to think about when you translate, right? Of course, the context will tell you. I cannot tell you in advance, right? Well, the example here with the present is suppose it starts raining, right? Okay, well, we have more examples with imagine we had never met, so we use the past perfect to refer to an action in the past. And suppose we went to Wales, just as a suggestion. Now, I want us to wrap it up, and I shouldn't say wrap it up, but because it's going to take me some time, on page 50, we're going to have a look at some verbs that call for the subjunctive, right? And these are very interesting verbs. One of them is one I'm sure you're very familiar with, which is the verb suggest. Okay, last chance to learn the pattern for suggest. Many teachers have told you how to use it. So let's make an agreement between you and me. It's the last time. So now you know it. So you suggest something. I like to suggest a different explanation. You suggest ideas to clients. And then, well, it suggested itself to me that I'm not interested in that. I suggest doing something. So this is the pattern we need to learn. One pattern for suggest is plus ing. Never the to infinitive. I suggest going in my car. I suggest doing something. Yes, in Spanish we use infinitive, not in English, period. It is suggested that is not important, right? Now, I'm checking. I'd like to suggest... I suggest that you don't get involved, right? That's another possibility. You can use that. And then, well, there's some examples that, well, you can suggest someone asked something, right? But the subjunctive hasn't appeared yet. Okay. Give me a second. Okay. There it is. It has been suggested that bright children should take their exams early, right? Now, it says British English because we insert should. We could actually omit it. This would be mostly, sorry, I pressed the wrong button and made the dictionary go to the entry for should. As I said, we could omit this should. Oh, not again. Sorry. I could omit it, and this is what American speakers do most of the times, right? I suggest that children take exams, right? I suggest that they do. Now, the reason why we retain this should is because actually take will remain invariable even if we omit it and even if we change the subject. So children is in the plural, and saying take in English doesn't bother. So if I say children take, that's okay. But what if I say I suggested that he take, I suggest that she take? Well, that's what we should say, right? British English usually retains should. So we say, I suggest that she should go, that he should go, that it should do something. But we can omit it and then have a third person subject, singular subject without the S, which is very annoying in English. What is that? The subjunctive, right? Because if you think about it in translation, sugirió que él hiciera algo. Now notice that we can say sugiero que haga, pero sugirió que hiciera, right? That's the correlation in English, right? That's how you, sorry, in Spanish, that's how you should hacer la correlación temporal en castellano. Sugirió que hiciera, sugiere que haga. Now, then, going back to our notes, page 50, we have these verbs, right? Demand, insist, suggest, require, and they all function in the same way. Notice the first example. They demanded that he leave, that she go, that it do something. So that's very annoying, isn't it? Well, it's simply because it is a subjunctive. If it bothers you too much, use should. Most of the times, for exam purposes, I will ask you not to use ellipsis. Ellipsis is when you omit a word, like should in this case, and I will say don't use ellipsis, right? So remember, you have to use should there. Now, the verbs here are demand, insist, suggest, and I strongly recommend that you look them up. Right? Recommend, double M, not double C. Recommend is another verb. Now, I wanted to use this verb because recommend is very much like suggest, right? But I want to check recommended. Sorry. Well, you can recommend someone to do something. You can use the infinitive with recommend. That's what I wanted to say, right? So here you have the patterns for recommend, right? Recommend doing something. You can recommend reading a book. Suggested reading the book, remember, was also a pattern. Recommended using. You can recommend against doing something, right? Against something or doing something. That's a very nice pattern. So don't do that. Recommended against using a drug. Recommended that, suggested that, he see, notice again the subjunctive of he should see. Recommended that he should see, it says British also. It is recommend that, recommend somebody to do something. We recommend you to book, so you can use it to infinitive for recommend, not for suggest. Now, the verbs that behave in this manner are demand, insist, suggest, require, recommend, order, propose. Now, look them up, yes, and check out those patterns because they behave in the same way. I'm not going to do that for you. Those verbs are very similar. Now, so we say that these verbs require the subjunctive, call for the subjunctive, right? They have this knock-on effect. But it's not just verbs. It's also adjectives, right? Here you find in your notes essential, right? It's essential that you arrive before 6, and then it's essential that he arrive before 6, right? Let's see. That you have some experience, right? Unfortunately, that's the only example, but he have some experience, or that he should have. Let's